everyone. You are listening to episode 283 of the At Percussion podcast. My name is Ksenija Komljenović, and with me are my splendid co-hosts, Karli, Vina.
Hey, Ksenija. How's it going?
Hey, Karli. It's going well. How are you?
Yeah, good.
Good. And one of our favorite ringer buddies, Caleb Pickering. Caleb, welcome back.
Hey, thank you.
What's up? What's new with you? You're just pumping out those YouTube videos and pieces like crazy. Do you sleep?
Yeah. Full 8 hours every night.
That's a lie. We all know that's a lie.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's okay. All right. Karli, you get to tell us what happened on our release date, yeah?
Yeah, so release date, May 6th. If you're listening on release date, you can think about these things today. I'll preface this with May 6th history is a little bit of a dud, but I do have some 80s and 90s nostalgia for those of you who like that sort of thing. Here's one. Do you guys remember Hootie and the Blowfish?
Yes.
Yeah, kind of vaguely. They had like a song. Mark Bryan, who is the lead guitarist for Hootie and the Blowfish, was born on May 6th, 1967. So there it is. Here we go. This one's kind of interesting. In 1993, you probably know Jerry Lee Lewis, who was like the famous for rock and roll classics like Great Balls of Fire. In 1993, on this day, May 6th, the IRS confiscated personal items from his home in Mississippi and auctioned it off to pay off part of his $1.6 million tax debt. So here's your public service announcement. If you're in the US and you haven't filed your taxes yet on May 6th, you better get on it because it's May 15th this year. File your taxes. And actually, I was digging into this and I saw Erykah Badu, the singer, something like 8 years ago, she was sentenced to 3 years in prison for tax evasion. So don't do that. Don't fall into this apparently common musician thing of not paying your taxes. So there's that. That was in 1993. Fair warning. And if you're like me, it's May 6th and you haven't done your taxes yet, but don't put it off. And here's the last thing I got for history today. In 1996, the Backstreet Boys released their self-titled debut album to international markets. And this is a direct quote from the source I was looking at, one of these On This Day websites. They were aiming to tap into Europe's fascination with boy bands. So, Ksenija, maybe you can tell us about that.
Definitely, it resonated with us across the board there. We all went crazy. That's true.
So that's it. There's your May 6th history.
I thought it was going to be a dud for a second, but yeah, you really came out with a winner there at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, phew.
It worked beautifully. There you go. Pay your taxes and celebrate Backstreet Boys today. All right, everyone. Our guest has forged his own career performing with one of the world's leading percussion ensembles, Maracatu. The two have toured extensively throughout the United States and South America and Europe. Along with his duo partner, Jason Huxtable, he founded the World Percussion Group to provide an international platform for the next generation of percussion talent. He is now the artistic director in charge of the ensemble, and we are so excited to chat with him about it. Everybody, welcome Tim Palmer to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Thanks for hosting me at this hour as well. It's probably a bit early for you guys, but it's very kind. So thank you for having me.
Of course, our pleasure. We've been trying to track you down for years now. We're happy you finally got the time to chat with us. Tell us how you've been doing these days and what have you been up to?
Well, today I've actually been classic British. As you can see, it's the first day of sunshine for a year in England. So I've got lobster face today. So you can probably might need to neutralize some of the imaging. But so it's been a good day today. But over the past sort of, since Christmas, really, just been starting to ramp up my teaching again. England, over the last sort of several weeks now, are beginning to come out of full lockdown. So things are beginning to come back to normal, which is great because I get to see my students in real life and find out what they've been up to and share a bit of real music together. So that's a really, it's a great opportunity for me to catch up with them, really. So yeah, it's been brilliant.
That's awesome. And we heard that the UK is doing splendidly with the vaccination and everything. And we heard that Boris Johnson went for that beer in a pub, which is a big deal. So we're good. Good for you.
Hopefully things are moving in the right direction. I think by next month, we'll be able to sort of like have groups of like 30 outside and, you can start going in houses and stuff like that. So hopefully things are on the up, and the vaccines are going okay. I think most sort of 60s upwards are sort of going through their second rounds. So yeah, all is looking well so far. So
That's awesome. Well, besides all your in-person activities that are resuming, you have the World Percussion Group going online this year. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What's up?
yeah, absolutely. So for people that don't know about the WPG and the project itself, it was initially inspired by myself and Jason, the other half of Maracatu, back in 2015. We'd visited loads of particularly US universities over our sort of, at that point, 7 years of our career. And we found that, there was this common theme running along all of the universities, that a lot of students obviously wanted to go into the music industry, maybe performing or maybe teaching. But, it was quite clear that when we asked the question about sort of the structure and the strategy, how they were going to bridge the gap between education and the real world, if you like, that it was quite a difficult, question to answer. And I think particularly now, like, everything's really competitive as it ever has been. And the sort of ethos of the group is to sort of help young up and coming musicians try and get some real life experience, like delivering lessons, master classes and performing, and also touring and getting to network with musicians from loads of different countries. So we collect a pool of artists on an online audition basis. Ksenija, you know all about it because you've been part of the project. And then we tour into different conservatoires and deliver those sort of online percussion festivals, really, both giving the artists experience, but also giving the hosts something as well to sort of embrace. And it's interesting for them to see all artists come together from loads of different places and have quite an intensive training course, usually 3 or 4 days, where we put together a set. Everyone gets their lectures ready and their clinics ready, and then we go on the road. So we've travelled all over the US. I think the first tour we did, we travelled 10,000 miles in a tour bus. So that was quite excruciating. For those that were in the first tour, they will tell you there's a lot of road miles on that one. And then over the years of sort of the duo, we've got sort of involved more with the cruise companies in the UK, sort of performing, and that's how the sort of latest transition happened. And we then started to use that as a mode of transport to go around the Baltics and the Mediterranean, which is great because in the evenings you get the opportunity to, unwind, relax, and sort of formulate ideas with other musicians and things like that. So it's a perfect opportunity rather than being on the tour bus, which is a little different. But yeah, really the main difference this year, I suppose, with everyone is, how do I create this experience when there's so many restrictions right now? So you're quite right. We've decided to move the project online. And if anyone's interested, shameless plug, but do go to the website. It's worldpercussiongroup.com. This year, I'm hoping, rather than going to the world, I'm bringing a load of coaches. Too many to mention, really, but please do go on the website, and hopefully you'll find the coach list quite impressive. And they're going to be coming online and teaching all of the artists from the different countries to do all of the above, which I've already mentioned. So yeah, it's very exciting. I'm still learning as well, like the live stream thing and the conference thing. So
yeah, it looks really great. Before you said it, I was going to say that you have an amazing lineup of coaches. People should go check it out. It is kind of too many to name, but wonderful, wonderful people. We do have a social media question, Tim. Vina Plays Drums asks, while we're talking about WPG, what is your favorite part of World Percussion Group?
Oh, what's my favorite part? Well, I like the fact that I spend so much time over a period of time with these artists who don't know each other mostly. Sometimes they do, but generally they're all from different backgrounds, different cultures. And I like when they come in on day one. Usually they're quite nervous on day one. They don't really know what to expect, which is quite understandable. And I like to see the progression over the sort of 2 or 3 weeks of like how confident that the artists get, and almost like a little family together of ideas. And you find there's different pockets of musicians. that create from that, and some go on to do other collaborations as well. So I sort of like to see the journey in real time, really, of from day one to the end. So I think that's the most rewarding part of WPG for me.
And tell us, what have you learned? How has WPG evolved since its inception, besides that a cruise ship is better than a tour bus?
Great question. Well, constantly sort of looking for ideas from all of the artists and getting feedback, and generally most of it is quite positive. There's not been much that we've had to tailor. Obviously, the travel aspect is quite strenuous at times, particularly, as I said, from the outset. So that is something that we have changed. I think one of the things we've started to evolve in is start to listen to the artists a little bit more in terms of what music they want to sort of portray and showcase. I think the first tour was pretty much like, this is how it's going to be, but over time I start to realize that I'm a little out of touch sometimes with like the new material and the new composers coming through. So I think that's definitely a way that I can listen more to the artists, and definitely sort of the trajectory that I want to go down. And also commissioning new music. You'll see on the agenda on the website, like there's 2 brand new commissions which we haven't done with WPG yet. So that's sort of a new sort of expansion, and giving not only artists an opportunity but composers an opportunity now as well. So that's sort of something that's taken a bit of time, and that sort of just happened really over time. But it's definitely a thing that I think will benefit everyone really. So
absolutely. And that's something that Caleb can maybe tell us a little bit about his experience of having his music played, and maybe he can also tell us about how he and I met online to talk about his piece for the first time, and how he just tore me into one.
I don't know that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I guess it was 2019, Ksenija and I did WPG, and I wrote this quartet, and my understanding was, oh, it's World Percussion Group, it must be all the best players, so there's no restrictions on what you can write. There's no rules anymore. And then Ksenija sends me a message like, hey, can we have a phone call to talk about some of these parts? And my opening line is, hey, you're in this group. I thought you were supposed to be good. I thought you were supposed to be able to play a bunch of stuff.
Oh, wow.
That was the best possible. And I remember that I got the music and I started learning it. And at first I was like, this person's not a percussionist. They don't know what they're doing. Then I look up Caleb and I'm like, okay, Caleb is like the percussionist. So I called him and I was like, man, I know, but this is you're like Theo Milkov in a way. This is your technique. I'm not sure that a mortal can just do this in, 3 weeks notice. And literally his response was, well, I was told you were good.
Ironically, Caleb ended up being in that group as well.
Yeah, I kind of fell on my own sword. I had to play for a few weeks that piece, so kind of screwed myself on that one. Yeah. I had a question purely just after being in it and seeing like everything that goes into it, and now this one is or this come around, the online is there's 0 tour fees.
Yeah.
Could you just speak a little bit to how you go about, like, I know there's all sorts of summer programs where you're there for 1 or 2 weeks, and we'll strike a deal with the dorms here and we'll put students up for a low cost and things like that. But could you speak a little to just how you go about creating that big of a tremendous experience, both on geographically and a pretty financially large investment?
Yeah, it's many different factors come into play. If I'm being absolutely honest, like risk is probably like lighting up like a Christmas tree, because you're right, there is a financial implication. But I've spent quite a long time, 5 or 6 years building up the brand, and what I didn't want to do is cancel another tour and have a situation where people start to forget the project, which is a shame to keep running, but also for a shame to everyone that's been involved in it in the past. So I was quite keen on doing that. So honestly, I'm self-funding quite a lot of it myself. The sponsors are putting up some finances as well, and there is a modest application fee. But I'm sort of really treating this as a hiatus, really, between like the time that we do it next time in full, and a bit of a promotional push, really, just to raise awareness of the group. And also, I've made a lot of pleading phone calls to the coaches, who are quite a lot of my friends, and just said, "Can you help me out?" So, which they have mostly done. So, with all those factors into place, it's become manageable. But yeah, it is quite risky. But I've got things in place which will help with that. And I haven't decided yet, but I may well sort of start a further tour before this one to sort of promote that one as well. So yeah, many ifs and buts right now, but it's a great question. And you're right, there are a lot of online things happening right now. It seems to be the way of the world, and funding is always an issue. And I think the difficult thing, like in the past, like for real events, calling on sponsors to support those type of things has been, quite a good way, but it's quite difficult, and understandably for companies to sort of realize their budget into something which is on a screen, because in essence they could do that themselves with brand awareness. So it's a difficult juggling act, but if you strategize it correctly, I think it can work. So
Yeah, great. Beyond even like the financial concerns of designing and running a festival and a tour and all these things, I'm sure there's just a ton of administrative work on your end to make this amazing thing happen year after year in different forms, of course. Have you kind of always been minded towards administration? Is this something you enjoy, or how has that worked into your life as a musician?
yeah, it's a great question. I do enjoy like this sort of arts admin side of it. I even from like the early duo days, I sort of took the role of trying to get sort of engagements, and there is a bit of a buzz about sort of, for me, about sort of planning a tour and putting something on. So that's absolutely something at the heart, because I think if I didn't get that, I would find it quite hard to put that experience on. Although it obviously is about the artist, it for me is sort of self gratification in that respect, that I can have something at the end to say I've organised this event. And yeah, it's definitely something that I enjoy doing, and it does take a lot of time. You're right, and I've noticed that I got a question later about sort of time management and family, but my wife is very understandable and really supports what I do, which is fantastic. And she's a musician as well, so she understands sort of how things work, and without her I wouldn't be able to do that either. So yeah.
What I appreciated about the experience was not only that I got to meet really so many wonderful people, and you do a great job of curating the group to be really diverse and so interesting in so many ways, but it was also the opportunity to sit with you and Jason and pick your brains about how do you start this. Just what Caleb and Karli just said is you do run something very unique, and for most of us who are performers, we have no idea how to organize such a thing. Like, you were able to ask and get a sponsorship from a cruise company. I don't know how I would even begin to like, how could I say, hey, I could offer something to you and you can offer something back, and let's do this exchange. Now, could you give us a little tip and trick, because I feel like musicians really need to learn that. How do you phrase your asks? Are they personal friendships? How do you approach these big folks, big companies, to ask for support?
Well, there's no tips and tricks. That's the first thing. I think for me, like, diversification in like so many mediums is really good, because the more you do, the more connections you get, the more doors open, and the more you can sort of facilitate that. And you're absolutely right. I'm a massive advocate and fan of sort of mutual benefit in terms of trying to make things work for both yourself and for other people. The cruise thing literally came. It actually came from our university originally because how did this happen? So Jason did a percussion prize for the university, and the adjudicator was an agent that lives in Stratford upon Avon, William Shakespeare, if anyone's listening. But that's where she lives, and she's responsible for running a music festival at sea on P&O cruises. So they get like opera singers, pianists, violinists, and sometimes the novelty act, that was us, like to go on and showcase sort of lots of different events, lots of different concerts, sometimes collaborations, that type of thing. And through that, we were asked to. It's quite lucky, really. The chairman of P&O came on board and had 2 sons with him, and really enjoyed our concert and came to speak to us at the end and said, "Would you mind giving a lesson to our 2 sons?" So that's what we did, and we sort of, got to know him and got to chat a little bit. And the next morning, actually, we had a very fine bottle of champagne delivered to our cabin by a butler. So it was quite epic. And from then, sort of just got talking really about. He's a real supporter of music as well, and particularly like giving opportunities to young musicians. So that's sort of how that came around. And I wrote the email just saying, we've got this cruise. I would really like to take the artists to Copenhagen and the Baltic capitals. We've got all the universities lined up, but the fee is quite a lot for the cruise when you balance off. So it's all the balancing that, really, the fees for the artists and the fees to travel. Is there any way you could sort of leverage some of the price in return for a mass booking, number one, and possibly we can sort of do some promotional stuff for you, do some videos, and we'll showcase your product, if you like, of the cruise ship as being a viable transport. And I think it was Cameron that said originally, like, this is an absolutely crazy idea. Like, I don't really know what I've signed up for, but I'm going to do it anyway. And he was the one that came back and said, actually, that works really, really well. And it is quite a crazy idea, really, because it's not known for sort of the transport aspect. But in essence, it's a ferry, isn't it? Really, just glorified. That
a really comfortable one.
We're not sponsored by P&O anymore, so that's fine. That's all good. So, but yeah, it's a great opportunity for everyone. They got a little bit of exposure, and they got to say that they supported like young musicians from globe, all around the world. So everyone's a winner in that respect. But I think that's my biggest, my biggest advice is network with lots of different pockets, lots of different mediums, and try and seek mutual benefit for both parties, because everyone's struggling for money. If you ask someone for money, then it's going to be quite difficult. But if you offer something else, which maybe has a knock-on effect somehow, then it's much more preferable, I think.
Awesome. Caleb, you had a question.
Yeah, this one was from our buddy Will Brown. He was asking essentially, and this has come up in several podcast episodes, but how do you go about balancing this plus also the family life?
That's it. Yeah, it's quite difficult, especially when you have a family. Like, I'm sure people listening will have heard this, but it is true. Like, when you start to have children, things do change. But as I said, sort of touched on earlier, like, I think for me, like, having a family which is already immersed in music, they understand and they support, is important. And Karli is quite often my receptionist. Sometimes she will say that. For example, she was the one that told me about William's question earlier. So otherwise, I wouldn't have known that was coming. But so having that sort of open, supportive relationship, I think, is quite important. And we started sort of like seeing each other like very early on. So as our career has evolved, she's been with that whole process as well. So she's great. She understands. But I think, in terms of like the grand scheme of things, like the 9 to 5 in any medium doesn't doesn't really exist anymore. And although music is unsociable hours sometimes, you know, my wife's a teacher. Sometimes she'll come home and she'll say, well, I've got like X amount of plans to do for tomorrow and like this marketing, and that's absolutely fine. That's what she wants to do, and I will mutually support her in that respect. So I think it's just being open about, where you want to take your career, how much time that's going to take, and that will alleviate any sort of stress like going forward, because hopefully you've had that discussion early on and people are aware. I don't know, what do you think, Caleb?
I didn't know we were going to go into a therapy session. This is great.
Yeah, I quite often do therapy sessions. It's fine.
Yeah. No, it's good. No, I think you're totally right. And I think Casey's brought this up before several times when he's said, people ask, yeah, he's like, oh, if you're teaching, playing, writing, you have a kid, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, you make it work. If you pull a little from one area, you push a little in another, and yeah, you just balance.
Yeah. Teamwork is the key.
I'll second, Tim, what you were saying. My husband is a bassoonist, and sometimes people ask, like, how do you guys manage your schedule and like in normal freelance season and everything? Like, it's pretty insane. And I think the only way we manage is we understand, because we're doing the same thing as each other. Some people who, marry or have partners who are non-musicians, normal people, say like that's the key. But I can't imagine even explaining like why I have to do this recording now, or whatever thing. So I think that's a big thing. I experienced that too. And like Caleb said, like just you juggle what's important. You can't say yes to everything. You have to be, like you were saying, Tim, like focused on your goal and do things that help you work towards your goal, and not get caught up with, I'm doing this for this person and this for this group and this for this. And then you don't have enough resources for your personal life or your personal projects musically. But
yeah, absolutely. And I think, like, particularly though, over the last 12 months, like the thing about like video calls and stuff like that, like there's been a few times when I've been away over the last year or so, and I've read a bedtime story with FaceTime or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So I'm not there, but she's sort of used to that now. My daughter's 3, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know, but she's used, for example, today we've been to grandparents we've not seen for 6 months, but because they've chatted most days, it's like they saw each other yesterday. So things have changed like that. And you could argue that we're in a medium which is relatively flexible when you compare it to like the army or something like that. That would be polar, like 6 months away. And so but yeah, I'm very lucky, and I think understanding is the biggest thing for sure.
Yeah, my girlfriend has an undergrad in music, but now she's trying to become or she's working on becoming an economist.
Oh wow, okay.
So she gets the music thing, but she's lined up for a career that makes 6 figures. So I'm really hoping maybe that works out. So maybe I can just write music and play video games all day, and then something like that. Just kidding, but
be a stay-at-home composer.
Yeah, stay-at-home composer.
Does she listen to the podcast?
She's listened to a few episodes, but not regularly. I'm probably in trouble either way.
You could be like delving through your finances and tell you where you're going wrong.
Yeah. It's like, hey, you've bought way too many coffees this week. Like, what? Yeah, 60% of your income is going to local coffee shops.
Exactly.
There you go, folks. This is a therapy session and a mentorship session and all of that in one. It's a little bit of history as well. But speaking of history, Tim, will you tell us how you got together with Jason, and what is the magic potion that keeps the two of you working so well together?
Yeah, well, I think the most important thing is we're best friends. Like, we were both best men at each other's weddings, and we we turned up in Birmingham. We both studied at the Birmingham Conservatoire, and there were only 2 of us in our year, which was quite strange. I mean, usually they'd take an intake of sort of 4, 5, or 6, but there were only 2. And the very first person, like I remember going to the first meeting with all the first year, so there must have been sort of 150 people there from bassoonists or everyone, all the musicians in the first year. And I remember the complete chance, 1 in 150, the first person I sat next to was Jason, which was quite weird. Bearing in mind there were only 2 of us was even stranger. But we had similar interests in music. We had similar friend circles, and it was quite apparent that we were on the same journey and trajectory together, and our teachers were really supportive. We had a great cohort of teachers. We had 7 different teachers on all the different disciplines, and they were quite keen on sort of fostering our relationship musically and giving us some duos together and giving us even some suggestions of music to listen to and things like that. And it was from then that it was quite clear that we had similar interests in pretty much everything, really. Music, beer, the full package. So from then we just used that time really to develop all of the repertoire. I think it's also quite important to mention, which I have done on quite a lot of clinics I've been doing, is that we didn't start off with a full artillery of percussion equipment. I started with a snare drum, and Jason had a djembe, and that was it. Our first engagements was marching through a Halloween parade at a graveyard somewhere.
First gig at a graveyard. Nice.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow.
First external gig, yeah. And then we did all sorts of random things. The university would send us out to do a red carpet event at Armani's opening spring collection in a shop, where we just have some drums which we'd probably steal from university. I said too much. And then just play a load of drums, and that was pretty much it, really. And it was at that point that we thought, clearly we've got a barrier here. We can't, do Halloween parades for the rest of our lives. So I decided to take the risk again. So maybe I am a bit of a gambler because I've used that word before, but I took the risk and bought a marimba. And from then, we started to get a few more serious engagements, and the university again were really supportive, helping us get those engagements as well. And then we got a bit of revenue and started sort of accruing some instruments. And then again, you asked the question, what's the secret thing? But quite often it's luck. I was accompanying a dance class, a contemporary dance class. I'd have congas, bongos, and a few things. And the teacher there said, "Oh, would you be interested in a collaboration, writing some music?" So I said, "Well, I don't really write music, but we can try and play along." She said, "Well, it's for the opening ceremony of the European Indoor Athletics Championships." Okay. So it's quite serious. So we teamed up with a music producer who was a bit more experienced and had been in the charts and stuff in Birmingham. And we wrote a 12-minute opening ceremony, which had flags. There were some roller skaters, some ballet dancers, and we basically wrote to every single company we could, because it was on Eurosport to 12 million people, and said this is a great showcase for you. And fortunately, a lot of the companies bought into it and sent us some examples and some promo stuff, and we basically used everything. And it was from then that we started to get those connections. But had I not have been doing that teaching session, then I wouldn't have, arguably I wouldn't be sat here. Who knows?
Yeah, that's really incredible, and I think that's really humble of you to say, because yes, I mean, all you can do is do your own hard work and do your own homework, but there really is an element of luck in all of our lives, that we're at the right place at the right time. And I think in my life, I got to meet you and Caleb on the same day, but you were the person, I believe, who recommended me for Marimba One, which is such a huge step in my career. And again, that was my fortune to have met you, and that you
Yeah.
did that for me.
So that's because you put yourself out there to engage in those different networks, which is exactly what I was sort of referring to earlier. You know, by doing that, at some point, I think you have to come to the realization that the practice is done to a certain degree. Obviously, we're all learning, we're all practicing, but I've got my core skills, and now it's time to spend that energy on other areas to sort of facilitate showcasing that. So
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
So we went from the graveyard to Dudamel, right? What a trajectory. Can you tell us about working with Pereira and Dudamel? Because that's, I mean,
Oh yeah,
any other
yeah.
percussionist who's done that
It's
big
quite
thing.
an amazing experience, really. Like working with Joe, he was really keen on working. I'll tell you how the commission came around. Really, we'd done a lot of performances across the US at universities and colleges, and we'd performed at PASIC. We'd done like the WPG thing, and it was really like, how do we continue to evolve what we offer? And it was quite apparent that, you know, number one, there aren't a lot of duos, like duets written for like the concerto medium, and number two, it's really hard to get into that sort of medium. It's almost like there's sort of two poles of and it's quite difficult to bridge that gap of becoming a concerto soloist as opposed to a recitalist. So I wrote to well, we did a little bit of research on sort of composers which had written for orchestras, and I came across Joe, and I really liked his music, and I knew Colin Curry had worked with him before, and I wrote to him just saying, you know, this is who we are. We've done these events, and we really want to sort of try and take it to a different route and expand like the medium really of like duo concertos that hopefully like other people can perform too. And he wrote a really nice email back, very humble, and said, that's great, I really like what you're trying to do. I love your style and I love your music, and let's propose it to the management. So he was actually the one that proposed it to Dudamel and the staff at LA, and wrote back within quite quickly, actually within sort of a week, and said, we really want to go ahead and do this. So so yeah, it was quite an experience. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, obviously from that point it was like, wow, this is like great. And then it took quite a few years to sort of, as you can imagine, it's a massive scale project to develop, and Joe had a lot of challenges sort of like bringing all of the ideas together, because obviously he was playing as a solo timpanist as well as us two, so loads of different things, loads of equipment, loads of logistical aspects, but yeah, it was an amazing experience to work with him and the percussionists and the orchestra and everything about that experience. I will look back very humbly and thank Joe for the opportunity, really, because I'll remember that for forever. So yeah.
That's incredible how that goes from an email to a week later, like, yeah, we have a gig with Dudamel. I mean, I don't know, that happens to you, Joang, probably, and then, you know, to you.
Yeah. But I think if I'd have written direct to LA Phil, I don't think I would have got a reply. So, you know, by communicating with Joe, it's, I don't want to sound like we used Joe, because it wasn't like that, but it was definitely something which he wanted to do, and we really wanted it to happen, and he was the best place to propose that. So I think, you know, it's stronger when it comes from a point of reference, you know.
Yeah,
Sure.
of course. So what was that experience like? I mean, you've played before. I know you had a concert in my hometown of Belgrade with our radio symphony orchestra. And this was not your first gig like that, but I mean, just going straight to Dudamel, that's how do you go
Well,
higher?
actually, no, in Belgrade, we didn't do a concerto, we just did a recital. We were supposed to do a concerto, but yeah, no, it was billed as a concerto, but it wasn't. We did like a recital in the end.
Okay. That
So
was sadly the year that I wasn't there, so I just heard about the concert. I wasn't able to be there. I wanted to.
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's okay. And then we had another concerto which was supposed to be on the first WPG tour in Iowa, but I got injured, so I didn't do that. I had a Garrett Mendelow covered for me. Thank you, Garrett.
Oh, nice.
So he'll probably like this. But so he covered a concerto there. So actually, this was our first concerto together, like with LA. But as I said, amazing experience, and to get to know Gustavo. The one story I have of Gustavo was this was the first orchestral rehearsal. If you watch, there's a video on YouTube actually of like behind the scenes, but our setups are quite tight, and you have to like sort of walk between them. And I walked around the front of his music stand. Obviously, he's like doing his thing, and I knocked the music stand, and I realized that he had his Rolex like on the music stand, which was like wobbling like this. Bearing in mind he'd almost written his Aston Martin off on the same day. So yeah, I remember that, and I was thinking, and then he looked at me like, it's okay, fine. So then so that's one of my sort of non-musical memories of that, was sort of
No.
there goes my fee plus 10 years. Yeah.
Oh no.
But yeah, I mean, as I say, really great orchestra to work with, so welcoming, and you know, all of the rehearsals were really light-hearted. Gustavo was great. He invited us to his birthday party backstage afterwards, because one of the performances, we did 4 performances. We did 3 at Disney, and then 1 in Santa Barbara as well. So we had a bit of birthday cake, a bit of champagne. He's quite partial to whiskey as well, so we had some whiskey. But yeah, amazing experience. And as I say, thanks to Joe, because we wouldn't have done that without him. So
Very nice. You know, thinking about like the way that you reached out to Joe and that helped you have this amazing opportunity. I've been thinking a lot about like the non-musical skills that our students need, that, you know, the next generation of professionals need. And networking is so important, you know, and not in a, I don't know, like bland kind of businessy way, but like if, as you said, if you reach out to the LA Phil and say, hey, I'd really like to do a concerto, they'd be like, great, get in line with thousands of other musicians that would like to do a concerto, right? But because it came from Joe Pereira, then they're like, oh, like, yeah, like, let's look into this. Let's talk about this and let's think about it. And that's the kind of networking that helps you get recommendations. Of course, so much is word of mouth. And if somebody else is recommending you for really no personal gain, but just because like for the sake of the art, that's so much stronger than you saying, I'm awesome, you should hire me to play.
right.
So I don't know, do you have any thoughts? What non-musical skills do our students need?
Yeah. Well, to sort of go back to what you were saying, absolutely, like the recommendation thing was good, but I think that's why agents exist, like, because they have those relationships with the different promoters and the different orchestras, and the orchestras, there is a certain element of trust there that, like, okay, it's going to be a great product, rather than sort of, you know, going in without. And obviously we're not agent led, we're ourselves. But yeah, another great question. And I've been doing a lot of sort of American clinic type things on career development over the past few months. And I think the biggest thing really is to not be sort of shy about thinking of where you see yourself in sort of 5-10 years time. Because I've asked the question, and I remember being the one being asked, like, what do you want to do? And it's like, oh, I don't really know. I might just see what happens in Birmingham, do some like orchestral gigs and stuff like that. And it's like, well, great, but what about you have, and it doesn't have to be one strategy, but what about if you have like a plan of and a trajectory of where you see yourself, you know, in that period of time, and, you know, analyze what are the challenges that are going to sort of prevent you from getting to your destination, and maybe what qualities you need to sort of put yourself and enhance yourself as best you can to be employable. So that's what I've been doing with these clinics, is literally sitting down with the students and brainstorming, like, with a few of them, like where they want to go and all those different parameters that are going to stop them from doing that, and how they can best, you know, get over those hurdles. So I think I think for me, it would be to really sit down and think about that, where you see yourself, and have a strategy in place, and don't be shy. Like, if you want to be a soloist, great. Like, let's see how you can best put yourself in that position. Because if everyone had that feeling about, oh, I want to be a soloist, but then no one would be a soloist. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for me is planning.
Having a strategy, like not
Yeah,
being
I think
afraid
so.
to dream big, have a goal, and then think about how am I going to get there? What's in the
Yeah,
way? Yeah.
with a level of like realism as well. I think like there is a equilibrium. You've got to think like, if someone has said to me, if I'd have said 20 years ago, oh yeah, in 20 years I see myself doing a concerto with LA Phil, I'd be like, okay, well, maybe let's focus on some of the things before that, which might lead on to something that big. I think there is a level of realism that you need to think of as well. Having many ideas is great too, but having too many ideas can be counterproductive as well. So it's sort of like streamlining the ones that you think, a bit like investing really. Like, if you're going to invest in companies, you don't like invest in 100. You do your diligence and your research. You think, right, these are the 5, and that they're the ones I'm going to put my eggs in and see what happens. So
Yeah, thanks. This is fantastic advice.
Karli, will you take us to our topic?
Let's go to the topic. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about movement and how it affects, especially the perception of musicality, and what does it mean to move musically. So several weeks ago, might have even been a month or 2 ago, our friend Noah Kageyama of the Bulletproof Musician had a podcast episode titled, "Do a Musician's Physical Movements and Gestures Affect How Musical We Think They Are?" So I thought this is really interesting. We think about this a lot in the percussion world, how we move when we play, because what we do is so physically, so physical. And so in 2008, he talks about there's a study of 112 undergraduate and graduate music majors from 6 different universities. So, trained musicians and or musicians in training, people with trained ears. And they are asked to watch 3 videos of the opening of Chopin's Etude in E major, Opus 10, number 3. They are told that the pianist in the video, it's all the same pianist, is going to enter a competition and wants some advice on which of the recordings is the most musical. Video recording, right? So the catch is that all 3 videos have the same audio, because this pianist was actually filmed while playing along with Vladimir Ashkenazy's performance of the piece. So they all sound the same, right? The three different videos. The first one, the pianist has no body movement at all, nothing other than what's absolutely required to play the piece, right? Physically moving the fingers and the wrists and arms. The second video, again, sounds the same because it's the same audio, but the pianist is allowed to have head and facial movement in addition to, moving the fingers. And then in the third video, there's full body movement of whatever the pianist wants to do to physically express what's happening, what he wants the character and feel to be. So then the reviewers are asked to rate the pianist in categories like phrasing, dynamics, rubato, and overall musicality. So I think here on our team, we probably all listened to this, but and what do we think the results were?
I mean, obvious. Everybody said that the person moving the most was most musical.
It's so obvious. Even I had my high school students and college students at New World School of the Arts listen to this too and was like, "What do you think?" And like, we all know, right, that the video with full body movement received the highest scores for all of these categories of phrasing, dynamics, rubato, and overall musicality. It surprised me a little bit that rubato got higher scores with full body movement. Like, it's just interesting. But I guess we feel it more. We're perceiving it, we're sensing it more. So it seems like if we're not already, we should all be really aware of how we're moving, what we look like when we perform. And it led me to go down this rabbit hole of thinking about, what does it even mean move musically. So I know that dancers think about moving musically and talk about moving musically. So I did a little Google search and I came across an article that's titled Musicality Matters: How to Become a More Musical Dancer. This was published in 2010 on Dance Spirit Magazine's website. And I think the first thing to think about is, what is musicality in dance? Like, I think music is an aural experience, right? Like, primarily we're focused on the sound. So what does it even mean to be musical with movement and as a dancer that's not creating any sound? And there's a quote in this article from Wade Robson, who's a choreographer and a regular on So You Think You Can Dance, the TV show. And he says that musicality is understanding music on a technical level and then dropping all of that knowledge so you can sit deep inside the music, which is not really the most descriptive or technical way of thinking about it. But then he does go on to say it's dancing inside the music as opposed to floating on top of it, which I think kind of, means like you're really involved in the music rather than like doing this choreographed routine to the music separately. What I think of and what I discuss with students when we talk about movement is that we want to be 100% physically involved in the music as much as possible. Just, physically and emotionally and, and in every way, try to physically represent the sound and the character that we want in a way that's natural to, our bodies and the way that our human bodies move and feel. So the article goes on a little bit to talk about phrasing and developing your ear through musical training. This is aimed mostly at, dancers that might not have a musical background, and counting, how they're experiencing rhythm. But I wonder what you all think about this, and how can we as musicians move in the most musical way, and how important is it?
I'll let the boys answer.
Aww.
Nice. Yeah, I think it's important. It's like if you've ever seen opera folks on stage, their makeup looks really good. Then you see them off stage, and what's supposed to be like a small wound is like a gaping like spear has gone through them when you see them up close. But it's just so when they're farther away, it's exaggerated. I think it's the same thing with movement. We had an absurd amount of undergrad recitals this semester. I feel like all of the last couple of lessons, the topics that kept coming up were, what are you doing between this spot and this spot? And a lot of them would do the thing where they play the lick. Okay, now I'm going to walk over, play the next part of the board. And it's just like, wait. That's really, really, that's a lot of visual noise you got going on. But yeah, I think it totally matters. If you see somebody play really well and then they do something that's really out of the character, it kind of breaks the mood. It reminds me of, it's one of the Terminator movies where it has a really cool opening, and then somebody gets off a motorcycle and steps down, and you see like a brand label for like Harley Davidson, like right in the middle of this, and it totally breaks. It's like everything that was cool just then is now negated because you've shoved like something out of character into the scene, and it's like the mood's broken. Like I'm not in the moment anymore. And I think it's the same with playing as well.
I wasn't sure where you were going with the Terminator reference, but I get it.
Caleb, you don't understand. That's necessary to be there because they sponsor that movie. That movie would not have happened without Harley Davidson. So
that's true. The At Percussion brought to you by UNO Cruise Lines.
Or Rode microphones.
Yeah.
Blue Yeti. But Tim, I'm curious to know what you think, because you have a very specific approach, and you're always trying to reach more people and a broader audience, and you understand that this part of appeal plays a big role.
Yeah, I think visuals is very important. Like if you I don't know, if you looked at a percussionist on YouTube and you turn down the volume, let's say you can't hear anything. If you've got a relatively accomplished musician, I'm pretty sure you could have a good stab at sort of the general musical message and the character that they're trying to portray. So even before like audio has had the chance to sort of immerse the listener, you've got a perception there already. So me personally, I think it's quite important. And I always like teach my students, even when they're not performing, like they're still in character sometimes, because quite often you see, particularly when I've done like these master classes, that the students will stand in front of the marimba and they're sort of, getting prepared. And I'm automatically thinking, oh, okay, like this is going to be like quite forceful. And then they go into like a little chorale, and that message is completely like opposite from what it should be, but it's because they're nervous. They're thinking like, right, okay. But it's amazing what the eye sees and what the perception of that is through the music. So I think personally, for me, it's incredibly important. Same for actors, and I think also what's made it even more clear is like the recent like mask thing is quite hard to determine like people's emotions and their characters like and their thoughts, because that's a massive barrier. So for me, like expression, facial or body movement is a massive part, particularly as percussionists, because we are moving so much anyway as a natural progression of like the instrument. So in essence, very important. But I think we're probably all going to agree with that. But
Yeah. Tim, I like that you mentioned the facial expression. I got a chance to perform aphasia recently, and I had to do it with a mask. And at first I was like, am I going to buy one of those clear masks? Because the facial, what you're doing with your entire body, that's a completely visual piece, would matter. And then I thought, well, you're supposed to maintain a neutral facial expression anyway. Like maybe the mask is okay, but it was just a interesting thing to think about. And even, I mean, the rest of the repertoire I was playing was like, more standard solo rep, instrumental rep. And of course you wear the mask and know that you're communicating slightly less than maybe before. I'll tell a quick embarrassing story about myself from when I was a student. This was before I did any theatrical repertoire or really, had kind of come into my own voice as a soloist and knowing what that means. But I was playing a piece with electronics. It was snare drum and electronics, and the piece was like over a minute of intro, so just electronic sounds. I'm not doing anything on stage. And I was watching back like my recital not too long ago, and I was considering, well, I come in at like 1.5 minutes, something like that. So I'm like, okay, I go over to the laptop and I hit play, and then I walk back to the snare drum and I'm like adjusting my headphones, getting my stuff ready. The things that we do, like when we're in the back of the orchestra and, nobody cares. You're going to pick up your bass drum mallet and check the muffling and maybe adjust the foot. There's so many things that we do that aren't so crucial when we're in orchestra because there's so much else going on. But anyway, I was like, cringing, watching myself, like the piece already started. This, like everything that's happening is part of the performance. And like, okay, younger me, don't do that. But certainly it matters in that regard.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think there's a purist approach in a way, and I think they are frequently trying to prove the impact of their technical or musical abilities sort of in spite of the visual impression that they're leaving, and not trying to use the visual impression to enhance it. So in a way, I think these people would probably be really great at Guitar Hero, because that's how they approach it. It's like, do you press the right button at the right time so you get 100 out of 100 at the end of the game? But that's not how it is. And I think, Karli, what you said, again, it's a purist approach to think that music is an audio, like sonic experience only. It hasn't been for, again, people who are able to see, until 100 years ago, when we were able to record music and just put it, in our car or in our headphones or whatever. If you wanted to hear music, you had to go somewhere and experience it with your other senses as well. So I think that it's just silly to ever think about pulling it away from it, because I think what you're doing is you're actually depleting the quality of the experience, because music is not an experience that goes through your ears. It's an emotional experience, physical experience, visual, all these things. So I don't know, if you're really good at that stuff, maybe you should switch careers and do Guitar Hero and win those great tournaments and become a millionaire, because there might be more money in that than in marimba,
Yeah, esports that's getting pretty popular, I
I
think.
think that's probably why like things like YouTube have become more and more popular as well, as opposed to like the MySpace like podcasts or audio. Obviously, technology has advanced massively, but you know, it tends to be that those like the YouTube platforms or the video platforms are the more successful, probably. Like if you look at the analytics, so I think like as I said, the eyes and the ears are like have got to be better than one, surely.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think
If
anyway.
both work, yeah, then use both.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. Even, you think about social media posts, like now, I think if you just put a couple sentences, which used to be normal 10 years ago, but a couple sentences, it's like nobody's really paying attention. But if you have a video, oh, great, even 10 seconds, just a little thing that says the same thing that you already wrote, something
Yeah.
visual.
I actually do that now, like with some emails. Like rather than write a long email, I just do a very quick video and send it to people because people are trained to watch videos more than read emails these days, especially if it's long. So I haven't got time to read that, but I might watch a video, you know?
That's smart. Wow, I have not heard of that one before. I might start doing that with my students.
Don't I'm giving
Angry
it
video.
away.
Go practice. All right, so we have a sort of closing question from our buddy Ben, who said, "Hi Tim, it was nice meeting you several years back at PASIC when Casey snuck me into the fancy breakfast at the Westin. Congrats on
Oh,
all of the
yeah.
success." Yeah, with the WPG. It has been fascinating seeing the careers of former members. And then in parentheses, it's Cameron Leach, Caleb Pickering, and Concussion, just to name a few. I'll tell you, there's a sequel to this. It's been great to see their careers take off. I was wondering if there were any non-musical skills you have noticed as a common thread to these successful young artists. And then I responded and said, "Hey Ben, thanks for not mentioning me because I'm not a person, I'm not an alumni and definitely don't have a career." And he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Then just add, "And why were these people so much more successful than Ksenija other than their obvious musical talent?"
Sounds a bit like Caleb. Sounds like they've been hanging out too much together.
Yep. But anyway, what is this thing besides the
Yeah,
obvious
great
music?
question. Again, like you guys are nailing it with the questions, like really good. Firstly, we didn't pay for that exclusive breakfast. We weren't supposed to be there. I think we gate crashed it, but there we go. I'm not quite sure what happened there, but I do remember that. So I think it might have been the twins that found the breakfast and we hijacked it. But anyway, what do they all have in common? I think that was the question, wasn't it? Like aside from music.
Mhm.
Well, I think they're all very passionate about like their lives and like I say, like their careers. They're all very driven, and they all want to succeed. And they do all have. I mean, this is kind of going down the music route, but they do all have like aspirations of where they want to go. And yeah, I think the passion that they have is probably the biggest thing for sure. I can't. The question I would have liked to have that a bit earlier because maybe there's other things that I haven't thought about. But I mean, you've been in WPG. What do you think?
I mean, that's for me. It's a puzzle of how you selected the people based on the materials that you were given. I think, as I said, I think you had a lot of wonderful people who had a vision, and you had people who maybe did not have such a clear vision, but certainly had a burning passion to discover it. Like they really
Yeah,
needed to find out what's up.
yeah,
And they were all at a certain stage of development. We were all different, but I feel like really most of us had those, what you said, core qualities somehow figured out in that stage of very, very early young career or just about to graduate, where we were ready to start thinking about these other things. But I felt like, yes, just their personalities, there was a confidence about, okay, this is who I am.
yeah.
Yeah.
I thinking about it as well. Like they all had this. The combination. This is the answer. The combination of like wanting to embrace the music, but the travel aspect and the cultural aspect of like networking with people from different countries and visiting. Like, you can't get that anywhere really. So as you rightly said at the beginning, it's quite a unique project. But I think, you know, that sort of excitement to experience different, it's sort of like when I was at school, like, and I left school, everyone wanted to sort of go traveling and experience the world. Well, this facilitates that in a musical way, so it sort of brings those two things together. But obviously this one, which I'm currently doing, doesn't. But I think that's probably one of the biggest things that people are interested to do, is just learn from like the touring aspect as well, and the traveling.
Yeah,
so,
that is definitely one of the most precious experiences.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, and then I guess to finally close up for real is, where do you see the World Percussion Group in 5 to 10 years? Since you teach that, now you tell us, what is your answer?
Well, that's a very good question. This one, see, I'm at the stage of my career now where I just sort of, I tinker like an old engine, you know. I just sort of replace bits. But where do I see? I see, hopefully, I don't know if this is my sort of dream would be to make it sort of possibly more active. So rather than every sort of 1 or 2 years, do it a little bit more, but also sort of try and offer the opportunity to musicians for less cost, really, because travel is always very expensive, and hopefully, like, the more the brand, if you like, becomes familiar with people, and the more positive experiences that our artists can go back to their respective countries and sort of portray, then hopefully that will inspire more people to apply, and we'll sort of give that structure in place to offer even more of an incentive for people to apply, and therefore hopefully enable me to uncover, like, literally the best. I suppose the ultimate, I've sort of ripped it really, but would be like the X factor for percussion. But obviously we don't have like the TV and the commercial side of it, so you know, no barriers. Like, for some people, like, let's be honest, like the fee of even applying is quite high, so that would be my ultimate goal, would just be like no barriers, and give the people like real life experience to go back and have a really strong position in wherever they go, and an experience that they can pass on to other people. That's sort of the dream, but quite a hard reality to sort of achieve, really. But time will tell.
It will, and
I'd
it's
quite like to do a
growing.
world tour as well. That would be quite fun.
Oh, that's a modest ambition.
That's like me saying I want to do a concerto with LA Phil, like 20 years ago. So, but that would be like the ultimate. It's just to sort of start breaking into like the concert hall recitals scene, like internationally and stuff, would be quite cool. But again, I'm happy to be led by the artists, what they want to do, and I'm constantly learning from them, and I want to offer the best experience. So
I already see it. WPG in 50 or 100 years is going to be all teamed up with Richard Branson's brand, and it's going to go and offer concerts, you know, in outer space. So, and you get to, you know, enjoy the ride also. So
that'd be quite impressive, wouldn't it, to send a Marimba One up on a rocket?
there you go. The opportunities are endless. Yeah.
Or any other brand for that matter, just to put that one out. But yeah, that's you might be onto something there.
Big brain. Well, thank you so much, Tim, for being our guest. It was a pleasure to chat.
Thank you so much for having me as well. It's been great, and nice to meet you, Karli, as well. Sorry, I've not met you before. So
Yeah, very nice to meet you.
Ksenija was referring to my wife earlier, who is also Karli. So I apologize.
Comment. Have you met Karli, your wife? Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know.
Like 2 minutes ago.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Karli. Thank you, Caleb, for hanging out with us today. And we'll see you all on episode 284. Bye.